Help us make sense of some of what we've been hearing in court this morning is Melusi Xulu, who's a legal analyst. A very good morning, good afternoon to you, Melusi. What we've heard for most of the better part of the afternoon and the morning is Wendell Jonathan, the Metro Police officer, being questioned here, denying. In fact, at one point, when he was asked a question about the CSC and the space and the access to the witness, the accused being able to see the police, the Metro Police, the advocate said, does this mean that the court must now reject the evidence of Colonel Khatebe? What kind of witness is this, and what should we make of what he's had to say this morning?
Good afternoon, Paul, and to the viewers at home. What is important about this particular witness's testimony is that he is actually accused of having done the assault, the tubing, and so forth. So obviously he's gonna defend himself and say it didn't happen. And what is important is Advocate Nzulu has to put the version. He has to put a clear picture exactly what the involvement of the constable was, Constable Jonathan. What piqued my interest in Paul was, I think there was another constable, Constable Mohane, who he says, Advocate Ngomezulu, he said, hey, leave this man, he will die, something of that nature. Leave the man, something. So I'm interested in whether Mohane will also be called, because I believe he will probably denied it, but it has to be tested to see exactly what was happening. And if maybe it's the truth and he's truthful and he says, actually they were assaulting him, I was there as well, then it's going to assist the defense more than the state.
And Advocate Mshololo has been trying to get a clearer understanding of the processes that took place. And of course, as she tried to put the version of the heavily armed officers being used to instill fear and threaten the accused, that was almost dismissed a bit, as we heard the judge coming in to say and asking the officer whether or not it is normal for them to be dressed in that manner. The officer then responding to say, yes, we are dressed like this on a day-to-day. Where was Mshololo trying to get to with that questioning?
Yes, when we speak of confessions, there are three things, remember, that we want. You must have made your confession freely and voluntarily. Number two, it must have been that you were in your sound and sober senses. Number three, there mustn't be any undue influence. I'm interested in the second one, sound and sober senses. I think on the face of it, if we talk about sound and sober senses, we kind of think about you being drugged or maybe it must be that you were drunk. But it also speaks to your state of mind, or what they call your confession state of mind. What psychological mindset were you in? You know, so if they were surrounded by many police officers, just making an example, who were kind of maybe threatening in their presence, that can give one a confession state of mind. Also, the surrounding circumstances, like for example, were you given access to bath, like, you know, for your dignity, and were you given proper food and so forth. So that kind of gives you an understanding that I think Advocate Xolo is trying to say the environment was probably not a safe environment, but it was a threatening environment. So I think that's where she's going with the line of cross-examination.
The court also heard how the accused was booked out of his cell for an entire day and night by the investigators before he was taken to make a confession statement before a police officer, and then he returned at 2 a.m. the next day. How significant is that observation?
I think at the end of the day, whatever we do, we need to follow logic. So the logic of him being taken early in the morning and being brought back like a day after to his cell, the question is, what was he doing before he made the confession? What was being done to him? What was happening? So they need to answer that. I remember on Friday that Advocate Mshololo wanted an occurrence book, an OB, to really see exactly what happened, and maybe it will assist in getting to the truth. Because, like I said, your confession state of mind needs to be looked at as to when you were confessing, what were the surrounding circumstances. I'm reminded of the interview you had as Newzroom with his father Bongani Ntanzi, where Ntanzi was saying on Newzroom that I think he disappeared for some time. They didn't know where he was, but when they were able to talk to him, I don't know if it was brought to Wanongoma like Usbia, but when they were able to talk to him, he said that they assaulted him and they said they'll give him 3 million, and they also put him in the fridge. So I'm interested in whether that version will be put, because I think when you are saying you were assaulted and you obviously don't have physical injuries, because they make sure that those injuries are not shown. The witnesses who you might have spoken to about the assault are very important. So I think that will assist. But like I said, the state of mind that you are in is important to understand when you're making a confession. So if you had not bathed and you were bought, like you're taken out for a day and you don't know where you were, we need to understand where you were, so we can understand your state of mind when you're making that confession, so that we can see if it qualifies sound and sober senses. I think that would be interesting.
What's also been interesting is an element of consistency. The officer saying that the accused didn't appear to have been assaulted. We also heard the magistrates also saying the same thing, being of the same view, that he didn't appear to be a person who had been tortured or assaulted.
Yes, that's the consistent situation, and obviously there'll have to be a JDA to support you. But let's be practical. The policemen are clever. They won't assault you to a point where your injuries will be visible. They'll make sure they use other means like tubing and so forth. So obviously we can't prove that. But I think what is important at this stage is also the constitutional issues that must be looked at. For example, I'm interested to see how it will be analyzed. You'll forgive me for not pronouncing his name correctly. The previous police officer who took the second or the first confession, I think it's Patudi. Yes, but he said he did not explain to him the rights for the accused to know that even though you're making a confession at this point, you are actually presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. So that fear is removed. I think that's something that the defense can further dig in when they are making their heads of argument or their representation, to say that they should have made him to be aware of all those rights, including the fact that, look, you're going to make a confession, but for the sake of the trial, you are presumed innocent until proven guilty. And what interested me was he said he was aware that whatever needs to be dealt with in terms of his guilt, it will be dealt with in court. But remember, if you go to R versus Becker, a very old case, it says a confession is where you make an admission to guilt unequivocally, and is actually equivalent to a plea of guilt in court. So as a police officer, when you're taking a confession, make sure that you make the accused to understand that you're taking a confession, you are making a confession, but we will use this in court, and it's the same as making a plea of guilty. So you are innocent until proved guilty. So be aware of this. Do you still want to continue? Then the accused will be in a state to understand that he doesn't necessarily have to make the confession at that point.
Very well. Thank you so much for that breakdown. Melusi Xulu, a legal analyst, helping us to make sense of what's come out of the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial so far.